and born alive. So imagine you're a child who isn't growing up, who isn't growing or developing quite like other children your age. Your muscles have low tone. You may struggle with feeding, speech, or reaching developmental milestones. There may be unusual physical features, but you don't necessarily have the feature most famously associated with the condition, excessive hair around the elbows. Your symptoms could resemble several other genetic disorders, and no single symptom gives your doctors the answer. Eventually, genetic testing finds the clue: a change in a gene called KM2TA. You have Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome. For Melissa White-Boyer and her son, Parker, the diagnosis was only the beginning. Today, Melissa is joining me to talk about Parker's diagnostic journey, what life after WSS diagnosis actually looks like, and how the gaps their family encountered ultimately helped inspire the Rare Genes movement, and her book, I Am Rare. Before we get into the Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome, tell us about Parker. So, Melissa, can you tell us what would you want someone meeting him for the first time to know about him?
Well, Parker is he's 12 years old. He's very much like many 12-year-olds who are going to school. He plays sports, and for Parker, he is just dealing with a little bit more complexity than the average child, dealing with some of his medical, issues that are ongoing. But ultimately, Parker is fun. He's social. He's outgoing, and people just really genuinely love to be around him. And if I, anything I would want for people to know about Parker, it's just who he is as a person and the light that he brings to the world.
Mm-hmm. So, what were the first signs that made you realize Parker's developmental and health might be different?
Well, right from birth, we were kind of thrown into this world that was unexpected. He was small for his gestational age. He wasn't growing and developing. He had a lot of feeding and choking issues, and his teeth were erupting really early. And those were some of the, very, very small things that were happening, yet big things simultaneously. We thought that they were not really connected. We thought that these were just things that were isolated incidents that we were running into. And it really wasn't until he wasn't catching up that we understood that there was something a little bit more complex going on. And then from there, we didn't understand that there was potentially a cognitive and developmental delay that was happening. And when we were, figuring out how we were going to help him, and the doctors were saying that he was going to catch up, we just kind of knew that there was something more. Eventually, a nanny had suggested that we get him tested for early intervention. And it was at that point that the doctors could see that there was something a little bit more going on. We had finally gotten to a geneticist at this point, and at this point, they had seen enough markers in order for them to pinpoint that there was something going on, but we were not given the access to the genetic testing, it was denied. And from there, he was, we went to the endocrinologist who found his severe lack of growth hormone, so he was deficient in growth hormone. And from there, it took I would say another year and a half. And this at this point was 5 years of this odyssey, 5 years in order for us to finally have his school system intervene and add to the complexity. That was the final piece that got the insurance to approve the genetic testing that would eventually lead to his diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. So, how old was he when you first noticed the symptoms?
It was at birth. At birth, when he was not growing, and at birth, when he was choking on his mucus and just having things that were happening. Those were things that were just not normal. So symptoms started immediately, but we also were new parents. So we didn't know what we didn't know. I just thought we were ill-equipped to parents. And I was like, oh my gosh, all of these other humans are able to, keep their children alive and keep their children growing. And for me, it felt so overwhelming. And, trying to keep him alive every minute of the day, for him to not, choke on his own mucus, to get him to gain weight and to grow. And so this was happening right from the moment he entered the world.
Mm-hmm. So what happened after you first raised those concerns?
Oh, well, the doctors initially said that he would catch up. And eventually we got to a pediatrician that said, why don't we send him to a GI specialist, because he was having some feeding issues. We got him to the specialist. And at that particular appointment, he was about 6 months old. And the GI specialist had suggested that we put him on Prilosec. And they had not run a single test at this point. So at this point, I just knew I had to advocate in a different way, because this doctor had just suggested that we put him on medication without running a single test, without really looking a little bit deeper into what was going on. So we then went into a hospital system we felt was going to be a little bit more equipped to handle what we felt was a little bit more complex. So we went to that particular doctor. And when we went to the new GI specialist at CHOP, they had looked at things a little bit more intensely. They had evaluated him a little bit more. They found things that really should have been mentioned to us right from birth. And from there, that particular doctor, who had run a lot of tests, then suggested us to go to the geneticist. And then finally, when we got to the geneticist again could see the markers, but she couldn't pinpoint what was happening. And because it was just not a well-known diagnosis at that time, there was so little research. It just wasn't something that she had seen enough to be able to pinpoint that this was this particular syndrome, that it maybe would have gotten approved had she had a little bit more information and it had been a little bit more established at that time. But at that time, it wasn't. So she just did the next best thing, which was send us to the next specialist that she thought would at least give us a little bit more information about another body system that she could definitely tell was, impacting him. And, from there, that really it reinforced to the insurance company that we did not need genetic testing, because at that point, when they found growth hormone deficiency, they didn't care what the underlying cause was. They just assume that there was an intervention for that particular issue, and therefore we didn't need any more information, which was, of course, disheartening, because we knew that there was more going on. And so when we started to understand on a deeper level the other complexities, like the developmental delays and the other things that we saw from early intervention, then we knew it was for sure that genetic testing was going to give us more information and answers that would help us. But it took, again, a while after that in order for us to have more symptoms show up, more developmental delays become apparent, and the school system to help to advocate.
I'm going to step away for a second and turn on the light. I didn't even think about. Let's see. So, here. There. Okay. So, so what kind of genetic testing did you have done?
We had the whole genomic testing, sequencing done, and it took about 6 months in order for us to receive that result. Which is pretty common because they were broadly searching for everything, since they didn't have a specific idea of what they were actually looking for. They just knew that they were looking for something, so they needed to really dive in deep for everything. And then eventually the result came back as Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome.
So there is both so to clue people in, there is both whole exome and whole genome sequencing. So sometimes you need both, but it's found it with one. So okay there. And so how long did it take to get those first signs to Parker's Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome diagnosis?
Say that again.
How long did it take?
Oh, it took 5 years. 5 years, which
it's not bad.
Seems to be pretty typical. And I think that now for this particular syndrome, we have a little bit more information than we did when my son was born and we were looking for answers. And so I know that there are families that are getting genetic results and tests and diagnosis much earlier than we had.
Yeah, I just saw a video on some of the research that's being done on it now. I mean, on YouTube, like maybe a half hour ago. But so there is a natural history study right now, but we'll get into that probably, hopefully, if you get on after the conference. And so were doctors looking to see were doctors looking for one underlying diagnosis, or were Parker's individual symptoms initially being treated separately?
Everything was being treated so separately. Everything was its own system in its own lane. There was no coordination or connecting the dots. So one specialist for example, one specialist wanted us to get tested for cystic fibrosis. And that was because of just one particular symptom or problem a particular specialist was seeing, but no one was seeing the whole picture in the way that we as his parents were. So they weren't suggesting a particular syndrome at all at the time. They were just looking deeper into what might be causing this particular body system to be reacting in this way, not suggesting that there was a syndrome that might be the overarching cause of everything collectively.
See, were there other conditions doctors considered before Parker was diagnosed with WSS?
There really wasn't. There was other diagnosis like cystic fibrosis, for example, but outside of that, they were not looking deeply into another syndrome. And again, I think maybe research has changed a little bit, and we've come a little bit further from that time. But they weren't looking for anything. We really felt like we were navigating very much alone and in a diagnostic odyssey, one body part, one system at a time.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go through some of the other conditions that it does look similar to, but it is not. So the other ones that it does look similar to are kabuki, Cornelia de Lange, Coffin Cirrus, Rubinstein, Tabby syndromes, and so those are some of the ones that it does look similar to. That it's commonly misdiagnosed as. But so they actually found out what you had pretty early on. Most people, it takes about 7 years to diagnose with rare conditions. So, on the usual, let's see, one of the usual features historically associated with WSS is hypertrichosis, hypertrichosis, cubitus, excessive hair around the elbows. Does Parker have this feature?
Yeah, yes, he does. And of all of the things that just seems so insignificant that it is not even something that would come on our radar, that was only even really discovered after the diagnosis, not a symptom of something that would in our minds lead to something else. Once we received the diagnosis and understood that was many years ago, even called the hairy elbow syndrome before it had the name Wiedemann-Steiner Syndrome, I was like, oh, let me check and see if he has hairy elbows. And then sure enough, he does. So really fascinating, but interesting, but not something that we find to be significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people wouldn't think of that as significant, but it's, but not everybody has it too. So you can have the condition and still not have it. Mm-hmm. So it's not obvious in the picture you sent me either. So, did anybody recognize it as a potential clue before his diagnosis?
Absolutely not. I don't think anyone, because no one was looking for Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome. No one was really looking at his hair. Maybe the geneticist was, and that wasn't at the time very obvious to me when we were in that particular appointment. What I remember most in that particular appointment was the measuring of every part of his face and symmetry and body. And it was so extensive. And so she may have noted that down, but again, not because she was looking for something that was related to Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome, because I don't think that she had the language and the knowledge of that syndrome to be looking for the symptoms to correlate that. It was really in the reverse.
Mm-hmm. So, so looking back, after the diagnosis, were there characteristics where you suddenly thought, that's WSS? We just didn't know it at the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when I look back, I think, oh my gosh, everything was connected. All of these seemingly unrelated symptoms and issues were all a manifestation of this one particular thing. So for sure. And even after we received the diagnosis, and I can look back and pinpoint that all of the things that we had already discovered were WSS, there were still plenty of things we had not discovered that had we not received the diagnosis, we would not have continued down a path of discovery for things that we didn't think were causing an issue, but were very much things that needed to be discovered, like going to a cardiologist and understanding that he had a heart defect. There were multiple things after that that were part of the discovery after that diagnosis was made. But from the point of the discovery, looking back, they were all related to this one finding.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Parker's experience demonstrates a problem with expecting someone with a genetic disorder to look exactly like the textbook description?
Well, I haven't met enough families that have Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome firsthand, and I look forward to doing that. But I think that I think that it's not responsible to think that all children or all people are going to fit the same description, and that the way that they look should necessarily rule out a genetic syndrome. I think that everyone should do their due diligence in putting pieces together of the information that they do have. And if that information is enough for someone to be able to get a genetic test, the genetic test gives the answer. So I don't think that there should be something that is ruled out because someone doesn't look just like another child, because many children do look very different from each other and present differently. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Let's see. What was it like when someone finally told you Parker and had Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome?
I remember that day receiving a phone call after waiting 6 months for the diagnosis, and I was waiting for the roadmap and the answer to what would come next. And they called on the phone. They said he had this syndrome that only had a few hundred confirmed cases in the world at the time, which was probably about 1,000, but only a couple hundred that were confirmed. And that was most of what we were given. They had said that there was a foundation that had been in place at that point. I picked up the phone. I called the founder of that foundation. She was so sweet to pick up the phone. I felt really great to speak to another human that potentially understood what I was going through, which she certainly did. But it was still so new that there was so little answers, and there was not a roadmap for anyone at that time, that instead of receiving this diagnosis that ended the odyssey, it was a whole new odyssey. It was just a continuation of what was to come and moving forward. So it was overwhelming, and we didn't know what that was going to look like. At the time, I was supposed to be picking up my children at the bus stop, and all of a sudden the bus driver is like, "Hey, are you going to pick up your kids?" Because I was so overwhelmed at the time. I'm like, "Oh, I'll be right there." It was just shocking. I was just not expecting to hear that my child would have something that was so rare that we were going to have to walk this road and carve this path that many people had not yet navigated.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't given any information?
No, not over the phone. We were not really given any information except for the foundation and just how many people were diagnosed. I had another follow-up appointment in which they had given me a list of specialists that I should potentially look into. And that was pretty much it. And so from there, I didn't know which one I should go to first. What did that look like for his future? What was his life going to look like? What was the in-between? How would insurance help? What was the support I would need for navigating the school system? I had so many questions, and I really didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, this was in 2020. In February of 2020, when we finally got to the doctor, and by March we were shut down because of COVID-19. So just to add to the complexity
Mhm.
of the timing of receiving his diagnosis.
Yeah. So most people turn to Dr. Google. Did you? Where did you go for to research it?
Yes, of course. I was Dr. Google for sure. And I think though that being empowered with more information for me is helpful. For some people, it's going down a rabbit hole that is really not good. I just really wanted to understand as much as I could. So I tried understanding as much as I could. Whatever research was out there, I tried to really understand, and then making the best educated decisions that we could as parents to know what would be the most important specialist to see that would make sense to just make sure that we could manage any problems that would arise or check something off. And every time we were expecting to go to another doctor that we were hoping that was going to check it off, this part is good, we would find out that, oh, there's something else we now need to monitor, and there's something else we need to manage. And that was really surprising for us. I was not expecting that, but it also made me really grateful for receiving a diagnosis that at least let me know that I had more digging to do, that we weren't done there. Because had I not received a diagnosis, and had I not received even the information of you should check out these doctors, which is pretty much all of them, I may not have been aware that my son has a heart defect, or that he has a lot of other things that we had not known at the time.
Mhm. So, so, um, let's see. People talk about the ending diagnosis about ending. People often talk about ending the diagnostic odyssey as if getting the diagnosis solves the problem. What did you discover about what happens after the diagnosis?
Yeah, like I was saying, the that's where it starts, right?
Yep.
It's now starting to understand the gravity of what you're up against and what life will look like. So we really needed to wrap our mind around the fact that there isn't this cure that was in place to cure this syndrome and this diagnosis that was given. We now needed to understand what life would look like in helping our child live his best life. And that was encompassing doctors, encompassing his home life, what support we could give him, and really coming to our own acceptance with not really knowing what this would look like, and that we were going to be on a road that we were going to navigate largely alone, and hopefully find support. And then hopefully, once we understood what we were up against, help the next generation of families that might be navigating something similar, or getting diagnosed themselves with something rare. And that was kind of the start of purpose for us. But getting that diagnosis was really the beginning of a whole new chapter that was about to unfold.
Mhm. Um, so, uh, WSS can vary considerably between individuals. From meeting other families, how different can one person's experience be from another's? Have you met anybody else?
I have not. I have spoken to and communicated with many families, but I have not met anyone else in person. And I really look forward to, not just for myself, certainly, but for my son and for our whole family. So we are very much looking forward to meeting other families. We hope to attend the WSS Foundation conference that's actually coming up, and really gaining a deeper understanding of what what this looks like. We have a lot more questions as Parker is getting older. We want to understand a lot of the research and other things ourselves, and really see the interaction. There's only so much, and I think that there's only so much that you can see by just seeing a picture, or just seeing a family post something, or just speaking to someone, versus actually getting a chance to communicate and see in real life what someone's experience is, and how they are living and accommodating, and what they're doing. So we very much look forward to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. So where are you finding people now?
So right now, well, a couple things. There have been people that have contacted me and have found me, that have had families of children with WSS. Whether they're finding me through our foundation, Rare Genes Movement, or they may have seen me write something that is specific to Parker's experience and our experience with WSS. And then there's also a WSS specific forum, and there's parents that are all over the world that are connecting in forums. And it is unbelievably valuable for those families to be able to communicate, because there is certainly things that, when the doctors may not know enough, a lot of times it's the families that have a different perspective of the entire circumstance and the entire picture. And when they communicate, you can really learn from each other from a clinical perspective of how to navigate this. So that has been extremely important, to be able to be in a forum and really read and see. And then, of course, connecting with any families that I have been able to connect with has been really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So where did you find the forum?
That was one of the first things that I did the second that I was, we received the diagnosis. I received the diagnosis. I called the founder of the foundation. At the time, it was very small, and they had a Facebook forum. I searched and put myself in there, just so I can, at the very least, be an observer to understanding and taking in information that might have an impact on things that we did for my son.
Mm-hmm. Facebook is great for this stuff. Now there may even be multiple groups, but with Facebook, I've found conditions who only have 9 known people with it, and they already have a Facebook group. So it's Angelman syndrome was one of those, and it's now actually has its own treatment, but they just got their first treatment a few years ago. So it's exciting to see these things.
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy was actually crying when he announced it, but
That's
I was at a Every Life Foundation conference when he did it.
Oh, yeah, that's unbelievable. There's so much power in parents advocating for their children and what they can do when they work together to make the lives of the people around them better. It's not just impacting their children, and many times it's not even going to impact their children in this lifetime, but the advocating that parents do is going to lay a foundation for generations to come as we move the needle forward in understanding genetic conditions.
Mm-hmm. And this natural history study that they have going on right now is actually a bridge to first treatment. So so that's what they need in order to get that information.
Yeah, the foundation has come a long way and are doing great things.
Mm-hmm. What specialists or healthcare professionals have been the most important in Parker's care?
Well, I would say that his endocrinologist is a really big piece of the puzzle for Parker specifically. His cardiologist, the ENT. I mean, I might as well just name all of them because they're all part of how we manage his medical care. But I would say that the cardiologist and the endocrinologist and the orthopedic, those are probably the specialists that are at the forefront of some of the things that we manage.
Mm-hmm.
Let me add in the GI specialist too, but they're all important, and it really depends on what's kind of happening at the time.
Mm-hmm. So what happens when the parent knows more than about the rare condition than the person providing the medical care?
Well, I think that that's very common,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're dealing with something rare. And I think that parents are many times walking in with information that the doctor does not have yet. And I think that it's our job to be able to advocate for our children, to be able to give the doctor the information that we have. And what comes next is what's important. And what comes next is how the doctor responds to the communication and maybe not understanding what they may have and how they plan on participating in that discussion. And I think that the best doctors that I have seen, they really are the most humble ones that ask a lot of questions. They really want to know more, and they don't pretend to be an expert on something that they're not an expert on, and not because they're not amazing in their specialty. It's just that they have yet to have enough opportunities to be presented with whatever it is that maybe this child has. And when a particular doctor says, let me get back to you, let me look at this a little bit more, and they really partner with parents or a patient to be able to have a greater understanding and best understanding of the path forward, I think that is by far the best way forward. And that's what I hope for in all interactions that we have.
So interesting. You actually prefer, it sounds like you prefer the more experienced doctors.
I prefer, certainly, if someone has more experience and they're going to know something about my son's condition, I would prefer any day for someone to have expertise. But I don't expect that everyone is going to have expertise.
Right.
I actually just prefer a doctor that is willing to be in it with us and wanting to learn, because I think that the student mentality of the doctor will serve the patient far more than the place that they're at presently. And so if a doctor is willing to learn and understand and really embrace the information that you may be providing them, in addition to learning themselves what they need to know in order to best help the patient, I think that is the best kind of doctor.
Yeah. What I was getting at is the ones that are just out of medical school are the ones that generally remember or generally know the most, because they're still going through it. They're just learning it. And older doctors seem to be set in their ways. And so I've had doctors who will say, I broke a little tip off my scapula once, and he says, I haven't seen that since medical school. I need to go back and redo this. And so it's
Yeah.
because broken bones are part of my condition. So it's,
Yeah.
um,
But I think it was good of the doctor to be able to say, I need to go back. And that
yeah,
even admitting that they haven't seen something builds trust, in my
yeah,
opinion. And so I'm
yeah,
like, oh, thank you. Now we can be a team. So
yeah,
whether they're brand new and they are just seeing something and they're motivated and excited, amazing. But you have a lot of
mhm,
experience, but you're still willing to learn, amazing.
yeah. I also would have never been diagnosed had it not been for a brand new doctor.
Mhm.
Um, so with my condition, the lenses dislocate, and it's commonly misdiagnosed as Marfan syndrome
Mhm.
because the lenses dislocate just the opposite. But um, so I rubbed trisodium phosphate into my eyes, and that's actually how I was diagnosed. And I happened to get a substitute doctor that day.
Wow.
And so, um, but it is commonly diagnosed through the eyes because the lenses will dislocate normally before 10, unless you are on one of the newer medications that is currently out. And our last new medication that was actually approved was approved in the 90s. So it's been a while.
Wow.
um, so we're working on another treatment, and hopefully this will go through, but don't know. If a physician encounters a child with WSS or another condition, uh, they've never treated you. What do you wish they would? What do you wish they would do?
I hope that they ask for what, as parents, we already know. And I hope that they would then be inclined to do their own research in understanding a little bit more in how to best help our children.
Mm,
I just hope that they want to know more instead of making a snap decision on where to go from wherever we are. I want them to make a decision with all of the knowledge that's available to them and connecting the dots rather than just seeing in their own particular lane. When they connect the dots, then you'll just get a more cohesive answer in how to go forward.
mm. So, at what point did you realize that the problems your family was encountering weren't unique to Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome?
Um, I think that we knew pretty early that when we were navigating something rare, that some of the things that we were navigating clinically might be individual to us. But
Mm,
as a whole, when you're diagnosed with something rare, you are still navigating the same healthcare systems, many times similar specialists, the same similar insurance companies if you live in the same proximity to somebody else, the same school systems potentially. So the systems are the same, the diagnosis might be different. And so that was something that we just kind of understood right away. And we're like, there's no way we can be alone in this. And I did have someone that I had gone to high school with who had reached out to me pretty early on when she heard that I had a child who had also received something rare. And even in our interaction of understanding some of the similarities, her child was diagnosed with something that was even more rare than my child, but yet we were still navigating a lot of the same complexities, a lot of the same emotional difficulties, and a lot of the things were overlapping. There were just maybe some clinical differences in how our children were presenting based on this particular rare diagnosis. So it was pretty obvious to us right away that we weren't alone in the rare disease world. We may just be alone in our diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're actually not even alone in your own diagnosis, really, because there's a lot of people, you just haven't met them yet. And so that's a great feeling when you actually do meet them. I just went to the fourth or fifth conference with my own, but it's a great feeling when you do.
Absolutely.
Get to meet others.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
What's the biggest gaps you discovered for families after receiving a genetic diagnosis?
I think that afterwards, it's the direction of priorities of where do we go from here, and that life still exists when we go home. And now we're navigating a lot of different things that we don't understand. And so the gaps are in how does insurance play a part in what we have to do? How will the school system understand what we need to do? What even is an IEP? What is the research? And am I going to be able to understand what that research means for my child? There's just so many different things. What does that look like when he is becoming an adult? And is there a social security? Is there a financial component? Is there a place that will continue to give him support? What therapies exist? There are so many gaps that are based on a lack of direction that we found, that we just didn't know what to do, that we really wanted to be able to provide that a little bit of direction that we had found for other people once we started understanding what we felt the gaps were.
Mm-hmm. You're actually giving me ideas for other episodes. Let's see. Is that what ultimately led you to found the Rare Genes movement?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Rare Genes movement is not about one specific diagnosis. It's not, playing the role to just support Parker or Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome. It's really created to support all families of children who have a rare genetic diagnosis in the gaps that we have found from diagnosis to where we go next in that little piece of life that is still existing when you go home in between the appointments. That's where we want to be and provide as much support as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to give some stats here. So 1 in 10 have a rare condition. 30 million people. We're 300 million worldwide, but 30 million in the US. So there's over 10,000 rare conditions. So
individually rare, collectively many.
Yeah. So let's see. Tell us about the Rare Genes movement. What it does and who is it designed to help?
It's designed to help all families of children with rare genetic disorders. And the intent is to help them within within the gaps of financial resources in the way of micro grants, resources, educational resources, getting to a point where we can deliver research in a way that is digestible for families, and to be able to create connection and collaboration in the ecosystem. So we're also creating other programs that are designed to help support families from where they are, navigating everything that has just nothing to do with the clinical aspect of their diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So from support, collaboration, and resources is really where we live.
Mm-hmm. Through working with families across different rare diseases, what problems do you see over and over again, regardless of the diagnosis?
All of the things that we are trying to support, the problems that they see, they don't know how they're going to financially pay for things that are out of pocket, that insurance does not cover. Even families that are doing well financially, it is still an overwhelming financial burden for the things that are not covered, because that diagnosis may not fit in a particular box where they are receiving support. So for therapies, for adaptive needs, all of that is really part of the gap of financial. Then there is the ecosystem, even within the community, how do they navigate within the school? Are there adaptive needs in the community that can be helped with? How are they playing in the park? Is it accommodating for them? Do they know other people with their syndrome? Can they be connected to those people? If there are only a couple people in the world, can they feel that they're not alone and be part of something, because they may not be able to find somebody else with that specific condition? So the gaps I have found are over and over again are people feeling alone, people financially overwhelmed, not knowing how to navigate what the next steps look like in school and in life and in therapies, and just wanting to know how to give their children best life. And of course, cures and research and all of that, certainly. And I think that a lot of the foundations are doing a really great job in those particular niches in what they're doing to move the research forward towards that. And that is their lane. And our lane is designed to be all of the other things outside of that, and how we can help support families.
Mm-hmm. What do you think communication breakdown? What do you think? What do you think communication breakdown most often between rare disease families and healthcare professionals?
I think that the breakdown is in every medical professional being in their lane. So they're in their lane. It's hard for them to connect the dots to something that is not in their lane. And so I think that is a communication breakdown. And I think that the other piece of that is that they are dealing with the clinical component, which is their job, but there is a whole other aspect of the whole person. And when we're dealing with the whole person and not just this particular symptom or this particular thing that is happening, I think that we might be speaking different languages when, a doctor is speaking clinically and we're speaking about the whole person and how this impacts all aspects of a person's life. And so just having that greater understanding, and then the communication of just partnering rather than the expert and this patient on a, need to know only basis, I don't think works. I think that the communication only works when the patient is part of the solution. When the communication just goes one way and not together, then I think that there's a breakdown, and we move forward when we work together.
Mhm. I've only had one doctor do it, but they did do it. But what you need to ask for in that situation is a care conference with your medical teams. So, and it's generally when they're advocating for something they believe could help. With me, it was taking me off taking me off the blood thinners. And so, but there are plenty of things that they can do. Just that you rarely see them talk to each other.
And when they collaborate, I mean, how much greater how much greater of a chance are we to move forward if two amazingly smart humans and specialists communicate and collaborate together? I think that many minds are better than one working at something independently.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but because there are situations where each specialty believes that they're their own boss. So it's I've seen that situation also, but it's if they will collaborate, sometimes it can work miracles. I mean,
Absolutely. Because sometimes one system is impacting something else.
yeah.
So, understanding that is huge.
hmm Um, what could healthcare professionals do differently when they don't know much about a patient's rare condition?
Do research, reach out to other professionals that they have encountered that might be familiar with that particular rare disorder, and really sit down and talk with the family to understand the experience and what they've been through thus far. I just
hmm
think that they need to want to learn about it. That's the best thing that they can do.
hmm Yeah, right there. They generally aren't willing to, but they're too wrapped up with the common stuff. But that's part of a saying. Also, there is a old saying. I forgot which doctor said it, but he was teaching students and said, um, if you hear hoofbeats, think horse, not zebra. Horses are common, zebras are rare.
Mhm.
And so,
Yep. And occasionally there's a rare doctor
mhm,
that goes out of their way to really get down to the root of it. And then that doctor you
yeah,
know, it gives us all a lot of promise for other doctors, hopefully, to do the same.
hmm So I have seen. There is one person I talked to who actually works with the mental health side of things, and he actually does the research for the psychologist to get a discount for his own community for the this is sarcoidosis that I was talking to the person from, and it's a great idea. Um,
Absolutely.
but
From
the doctor is willing to spend the time to read the research is the other thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
because that's a lot of times for me that was why I didn't believe in my condition. I don't know anybody with it. I
Mhm.
don't even know anybody who mine is metabolic, and so I have to follow a low protein diet. But um, I don't know anybody with it. Nobody's taking the time to look it up. Why should I believe you?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was my whole thing.
Mhm. Yeah, you really start doubting yourself. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Am I the only one who is seeing this? I think that that is the one thing that that is the relief. I think when someone does finally at least receive a diagnosis, even though it is not the answer, there is an emotional component tied to at least there is a word that describes all of these other things I have not been able to put together, and I don't feel like I am crazy. And so there might be a lot to navigate, but when someone spends 5 years or 7 years and has, you know, experiences that are hard to connect, a diagnosis at least I think gives a little bit of relief in that respect.
Hmm. So when you think about inclusion, what does true inclusion mean to you?
I think inclusion is being able to exist in the world that everybody else does, even if someone needs some support. So, inclusion in the school system means my child might be able to participate in the same classes, but they may need someone that is there to help support them. And including children and including people in all environments and making it conducive for them to be there and participate. That's to me inclusion.
Hmm. So, um, what does the difference between allowing a child with a disability to participate and actually making that child feel that they belong?
Now, that is a very big distinction because being included is one thing. You're there, you're able to exist in this environment, but to
Mhm.
feel like you belong is something entirely different. And I think that the difference is that people make you feel welcome in that environment. Parker, my son, he can participate in soccer and he loves soccer, but if he's participating in soccer and the kids don't kick the ball to him because they are afraid that they're going to hurt him, he doesn't feel like he belongs, even if he's participating, even if he's included. So, allowing children to not just participate, but to make them feel like they belong is a little bit different. And as parents, I think that we hold our breath waiting for our children and hoping that our children will feel like they belong. And it's something as simple as inviting them to be in the picture, inviting them to the birthday party, including them and inviting them to be in the conversation, not just exist there while the conversation is happening. And that difference, I think, is how you make a child or anyone feel like they belong. And I think that that is a major difference in their well-being, their confidence, and how they feel about themselves.
Mhm. Let's see. Are there assumptions people make about children like Parker that you'd like to challenge?
Yeah, I think that for sure with Parker, I think he's just an interesting child because sometimes he's overestimated and sometimes he's underestimated. He's overestimated because he has more expressive language than he does receptive and comprehension. Therefore, people assume that he understands a little bit more than he does. On the other side of that, they underestimate what he can do and his ability because he's so small that he looks half of his age. And so they assume that he can't do certain things. And so that kind of complexity is really interesting. And I think that the most important piece of advice that comes from that is to not assume anything when you see a child of what they can or cannot do based upon how they look or how they present. It's really getting to know that particular child and really understanding where they are and what their true abilities lie, where their true abilities lie. And when someone really gets to know Parker, they can kind of understand where the barriers are and how they, how they can play with him. And I think that is that's something that I would like for people to learn how to do. Instead of making an assumption, they really get in there and really see.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. What made you decide to write I Am Rare?
I knew that one day my son would ask me why he is different. And I wanted to have the words to express to him that he was not anything less than, and that there wasn't anything wrong with who he innately is. And I also knew that one day he would have this conversation with children who would ask him why and how he is different. And so I wanted those same words to be able to apply to not just my son, but to all children, because deep down, we are all different and our genes make us different. And that in a way is universal. And so when people really understand that we are all different based on this universal thing that we all have, our genes, then we are able to feel connected. And I wanted him to feel prideful. So the metaphor of the superhero having genetic mutations, being able to shift that paradigm and to reframe his understanding of hearing the words genetic mutation and being able to relate it to something that he saw in a positive light. I wanted to be able to him to understand that it was something similar that he could mentally envision. And I knew that this was something that he would be able to grow with. But at the same time, I understood that this wasn't just something that could help Parker, that I'm sure that many families would want similar words to help their children feel that they weren't less than, that they belong, that if they take pride, learn to have pride in themselves, that that there is a light that shines from them. Mm-hmm. And I wanted all children to understand universally how we are all different.
Mm-hmm. So this is the book. For those, it is available on Amazon, and for those interested. Let's see. What made you decide to? Okay, see. How much did you experience with Parker's influence in the story?
Well, Parker definitely influenced the story. He's the reason the book exists. But the little boy in the story isn't Parker. He is just a little boy that is experiencing something similar, navigating something rare, being able to share his evolution and journey of understanding himself and his genetics, and then moving into the pride and acceptance of who he is. So he is the inspiration, but he is not the story.
There's one line in I Am Rare that really stood out to me. The child says, sometimes I wonder who I will be and if the world has room for me. I really like the overall message of the book, but I found this particular line is very heavy. I especially for a child or parent who doesn't really understand the rare disease experience.
Yeah.
What did you want the line to communicate?
Yeah, I love that you ask about that, and I think that every good book should stop and make people think and even create conversation
Mhm.
and a little bit of a maybe a different perspective or a deeper understanding. And when I wrote that, I don't think that we need to necessarily gloss over things that are difficult in order for us to also affirm things in a positive way.
Right.
And my daughter, who is neurotypical, she also wonders where she's going to fit into the world and if the world has room for her and who she's going to be. And because of that, that naturally fit because it may have a little bit more weight or magnitude for someone who feels a little bit different and maybe has something rare. But ultimately, we all universally really just kind of are thinking about where we all fit into the world based on our own unique value. And then the
Mhm.
story really goes on to affirm that we are born and are meant to be exactly as we are. And having pride in that understanding and deep connection to who we are and being different, being okay, and that we can belong as we are makes us shine brighter. And it makes
Mhm.
the world even brighter because we're in it. So I think that it really actually gives a chance for empathy for children who may not connect on such a deep level to that feeling, to children who might actually feel like that. But I also think it creates conversation for anyone to be able to think that in moments they might wonder, who am I going to be? Does the world have room for me? And that answer is yes, when you have pride in who you are and how you're meant to be. And if we can affirm that, then I think that the messaging is a really positive uh, opportunity for us to have that conversation with children.
Mhm. Um, so now that I hear your perspective, it's a little bit different than what I was actually thinking. That second part of the line is where I'm like, this is really heavy, and but it's true of rare diseases, and so it's I'm not saying sugarcoat it, but it it's just something that does sound like it would be heavy for somebody who doesn't understand.
Yeah, and I think being able to have that conversation even
Yeah.
on starting at a high level and maybe at a deeper level in moments where maybe a child did have a hard day or maybe there's something that happened. I think that reading it in a book and seeing this child navigate that and thinking that and then seeing the perspective and that shift in what this little boy now thinks and understands about himself becomes a framework for a child to reference for their own feelings and how to navigate that.
Yeah. It's just that one line is the only negative thing in the book. I'm like, the rest of this is so positive. It's
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great book, but yeah, that was the one area where I'm like, oh, this is heavy. um, let's see. When you say, let's see, when you say, does the world have room for me? Are you talking about belonging and inclusion, or whether there's a place or for this child in the school, friendship, and and the larger community?
Yeah, I think it's a child thinking about whether they will fit in being exactly who they are. Is there room for me to be exactly who I am and to be true to myself and to be accepted? And I do think that it's really about belonging. Will they feel that they belong?
So maybe the question shouldn't only be whether the world has room for a child who is different. What do we need to do? What do we need to change, and so the child never has to wonder whether there's room for them?
I don't know that we will ever take away the wonder of children and whether they will wonder if they will fit in, because I do think that that is universal. But I do think that what we can change is how we respond to children and how they think about that answer, and that they feel confident that they will fit into the world because they are included, because we have these conversations, because other children learn to have empathy and a deeper understanding of children with differences, and how they are also similar to children with differences, even if there is a difference in magnitude. And if we can reframe not just whether they're going to wonder if there's room for them, but if we can make the world a place in which they can be accepted, then that answer that they will come back to is that positive affirmation of, when I have pride in who I am, my star is going to shine brighter. And the world is brighter because I am in it, because I exist exactly the way that I am. And affirming that, I think, is the part that we play as a community, as friends, as people that are learning to grow with the many children that are going to be different, along with just everyday children that, exist in the world that we are blessed to have an opportunity to have any sort of impact on.
So what do you hope a child with a rare condition feels after reading the book?
I hope that they feel seen. I hope that they feel this moment of just reflection of something that feels familiar to them, and that they feel like they can belong in a world exactly as they are, because the world is brighter because they are in it just as they're meant to be. And that is what I hope that any child feels from reading the book.
And what do you hope their classmates, siblings, friends understand differently about afterwards?
I hope very similarly they feel the same way, in terms of having a greater understanding of our differences and how our differences really are the same and universal. And I hope that there is an opportunity for empathy to exist, where someone may understand that although they may feel similar in wanting to belong, that maybe there is an even deeper level of somebody else who has a greater difference to want to belong, and that maybe there is an opportunity for me to help another child feel included, feel great, just for acknowledging that child for who they are and exactly as they're meant to be. So I hope that there just comes a greater understanding and empathy that exists from reading the book.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. As Parker's mom, what are the questions about WSS that you hope researchers will eventually be able to answer for your family?
I think I have more questions than I have answers. And I think a lot of our questions have to do with quality of life and mobility and cognitive development and what things that we could be doing proactively now as we potentially put pieces together to know what might unfold based on the understanding of what's happening right now instead of in hindsight connecting dots. If we can understand what is happening right now or what will happen inevitably in 5 years, in 10 years, can we be doing something proactively to help our children live their best life? Uh, Lifespan, quality of life, all of those things are really the things that I have questions about, and I want to really have a deeper understanding about at this point, especially emotional development and how my son is going to navigate the world and how as a parent I can best help him.
What would you most like what would you most like the medical and research communities to understand about people living with WSS?
I think that they all understand that we're all human. They're all individuals. I think the things that they don't see are the personalities that each of these children have, the excitement that my son has to participate and be part of something, his enjoyment in camaraderie, sports, and just to really understand that what they are doing, each little part has a big impact, not just on a data set, not just in one little area, but an entire family by what they are doing. And I think that if they can really think broader, which I think many do, but if they can think broader to the impact that they're having, I think that there's just a deeper level of purpose put into decisions and what they're doing. But just really having a deeper understanding that, man, these children are amazing humans, each with their own world and families that love them.
If a WSS researcher happens to be watching this episode, what would you want the researcher to know about Parker that they couldn't learn from a database?
Yeah, I think the things about Parker, he loves people. He loves being in a community, being part of a team. He loves anything where people get together and are cheering and chanting and singing. And he's part of Team Impact, which is connected to Georgian Court soccer team, which is just huge for him.
Mm-hmm.
And every opportunity that he has to be put in an environment to make somebody else's day better, to give them excitement, shine, a hug, anything in that world is who my son is.
Mm-hmm.
He loves the haka. He loves the national anthem of every country, and he sings it proudly, not knowing the language. And he is just an amazing, amazing human being.
So what's something that I wouldn't know from reading his medical chart?
All of those things. Parker, he eventually gets there, but it might take him a little bit longer to do so. So he just learned how to ride his bike, and It's taken him 12 years, a lot of tears. We almost, he almost gave up on it, but we wouldn't let him quit. And now he can't wait to ride his bike 2 doors down and have some independence. And I think it's important to know that although there might be limitations, he is unbelievably persistent and resilient and works harder than most people that I know to do something. And when he accomplishes something, he feels so proud of himself. So to see him accomplish any little thing, we're working on tying his shoes and doing buttons right now, and it might take him twice the time, but he is still learning and still growing. And so I want people to not put a limitation on what our children can do, because they are still learning and growing. It might take them a lot of time. There is a lot of complexity involved in how we navigate everyday life, but he's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I believe this because of old research, but about 70% of rare disease patients are children. And so how old is Parker?
Parker just turned 12.
Wow. Oh, wow. He's older than I thought.
Yeah. Well, when you see a picture of him, he definitely looks 5.
Yeah.
And his older sister, his younger sister is, 2 years younger than him. And she at this point is towering over him and doing a lot of things that he's not ready to do yet. And so he's starting to be aware a little bit more of his differences at this point. And it's really an interesting thing to see it, kind of unfold at this point. But yeah, he's 12 years old. So when we go into a store, we see someone, of course, everyone makes the assumption that she's the older sister, and they have this whole back and forth thing. Then they look at me, they ask for my approval. They think he's lying when he says his age. And but then they think he's the smartest 5-year-old they've ever seen because they hear him talk. And but it's fun. We love every second of being his parents and having him in our life, and we wouldn't change any of it. And now our purpose is just to help him live his best life, help our other children live their best lives, and to make a positive impact on as many people as we possibly can from our own experiences and what we've learned from some of the things that we've gone through.
Mm-hmm. So my cat just jumped up on me. So, but so that's Dream.
Dream, you said?
Yeah, her name is Dream.
Hi, Dream.
She's about 3 years old.
Oh. I thought Parker might make a cameo. Here he's getting dropped off from ESY soon, but
wow. So what's ESY?
Extended school year.
Oh.
He goes to school in the summer so that he doesn't regress in all of the things that he's learned throughout the year. So it's really nice. We're in an amazing community, and they do some really fun things, and they go on class trips, and they really learn some real life practical things, like getting on a train and how to pay for pizza at the store and going to the grocery store, and how to really live in the world and understanding basic fundamentals of being in a community. So they do a really great job, along with having some fun, since they're going to school in the summer. They're really great pals and friends and buddies to each other. They learn how to be great humans while they're still working on all of the things educationally.
Yeah, we used to just call it summer school, but that actually sounds kind of like home ec.
Yeah. Well, it's all of it. It's all of it. And I don't know that everybody does it the same exact way as they do in our community. We just have teachers that go above and beyond to make sure that the children get everything that they need to thrive.
It sounds like you got a great school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Melissa, thank you for joining me today and for introducing us to Parker and for sharing your family's journey with Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome. And thank you for the work you're doing through the Rare Genes movement and I Am Rare to help other families feel seen, supported, and included. Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome may be part of the Parker's story, but it isn't the whole story. Today, we've seen how difficult it can be to recognize a condition when someone doesn't necessarily fit every textbook description, and how receiving a diagnosis doesn't automatically provide a family with all the answers or support they need. One line from I Am Rare asks whether the world would whether the world has room for a child who is different. Maybe that question, we went through that, but instead of asking whether there's room for someone like Parker, maybe we should be asking what we can do to make sure more there's room already for them. And if you're watching this conversation about belonging, it's particularly close to home, and you're struggling or in crisis. In the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You don't have to be suicidal to reach out. Melissa, Melissa will be attending the WSS Foundation conference, and later this year, and I hope, and hopefully, we'll have the opportunity to revisit the Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome and some of what she's learned then. Coming up next week on Rare Connection, Geneva Stone will be back. This time it's a family affair, and she'll be bringing back her husband and her son, who is now an adult, and we'll be showing off the eye gaze and some of the other equipment that he's using, and talking about caregiving and his actual diagnosis that we did get recorded last time. We look forward to look for that episode next week, and thank you for joining us on Rare Connection. I'll see you next time.
Joanna, this is Parker, and he nice just got off the bus, and we've been talking a bit about you for the last hour and a lot of different things. So I figured you'd make a cameo. Thank you, Joanna, for having me. Yeah. I really, really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful time talking, And I look forward to speaking with you next time.
Yeah. So I'm going to punch off of this.